I'm now joined by Jack Bloom, DA Gauteng member of the legislature and the party's health spokesperson. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Bloom. Thanks very much for your time. Well, the health MEC says she's satisfied with the level of care that Mr. London received.
Well, I'm just astonished at the response by the Health MEC and the Gauteng Health Department as a whole. He clearly received terrible care, and the doctors were very callous and uncaring. And, we saw the video of how bad the ward is, and I would have thought that the Gauteng Health Department would at least admit how bad things are and work to improve things. But they shouldn't be denying what actually happened, because I think we all saw the video. I went to see Mr. London myself, and he gave me even more horrifying details. He was particularly upset by the behavior of the doctors, and the Gauteng Health Department says they have a campaign called I Serve with a Smile. Well, that certainly wasn't the case at his ward at the Helen Joseph Hospital. The doctors seemed to be very rude and callous. They were talking about restaurants and their latest bonus while a patient was screaming. Unfortunately, that patient later died. His body wasn't taken from the ward for a number of hours, and what Mr. London told me is that there were flies all over the ward, and you'd think that cleanliness is a basic need for a hospital, and that when this patient died, the flies were all over the body. It was just too terrible for words, and that's why Mr. London decided to make the video, which has now gone viral. And you'll see from the responses to the video that people largely agree that our hospitals can be very terrible indeed, and they need to be fixed up. And I would have hoped that the Gauteng Health Department would explain, for instance, why Helen Joseph Hospital hasn't had a permanent CEO for a number of years.
Well, the MEC says she's open to an independent process that would look into, or that would review the quality of medical assistance that Mr. London received. Clearly, she's confident that there would be no adverse findings.
Well, I think we should go ahead with a truly independent investigation of what happened, but also the staff attitudes that Mr. London has described just seems too terrible for words. Something is clearly wrong at that hospital, and the fact of the matter is this is not uncommon in other hospitals as well. And the Gauteng Health Department as a whole is notorious for corruption and mismanagement and inefficiency. This was a department where Babita Dearkran tried to blow the whistle on the massive corruption at the Tembisa Hospital, and she was murdered for it. Now, I don't think that anything has changed much at the top management. I think they're still covering up corruption. I still think that there's political protection. Premier Panyaza Lesufi has just appointed as the head of department someone who's actually facing an SIU investigation into an alleged bribe of 8 million rand that he allegedly shared with two other officials. Now, you would think that a department that's in such trouble would take particular care to appoint as head of department someone who is with no cloud whatsoever above them. And I think there were irregularities in that appointment. That's why I've referred it to the Public Service Commission. So I think things are terribly wrong in that department, and we need to see really firm change, but I don't think it's going to come under the present administration.
Well, I saw that the Portfolio Committee on Health and Wellness entered the fray and took note of Mr. London's tweet, after which they then say that they lack, such posts as Mr. London's often lack the comprehensive context needed for anyone to reach informed conclusions. They have since requested a thorough report, but they also point out, which is the interesting part for me, that the department has previously received an 84% score in patient experience of care, in the patient's experience of care survey, which surpassed the national target by 4%. In other words, or put differently, the chairperson, Ezra Letswalo, is here saying you're dealing with a department here that is actually carried itself well, even though there's a lot of room for improvement.
Well, I'm a member of the Gauteng Legislature's Health Committee, and there was no consultation with other members about that statement. So it's purely a statement by the chairperson himself, who's a member of the ruling party. I'm very suspicious of these so-called surveys of patient satisfaction. I think there needs to be an independent review of it. The very fact that Mr. London's video has gone viral shows you that things are terribly wrong. The overwhelming number of comments agree with what is happening there. Now, I do think we need to be fair, and there are actually many doctors and nurses who do what they can for their patients in hospitals. But unfortunately, incidents like Mr. London experienced are far too common. And I don't think we should put our heads in the sand. I think we need to do a better measurement of patient satisfaction. You know, one of the problems is that patients are scared to speak out. You know, Mr. London is a professional broadcaster, and he was able to get his story out on social media. There's so many people who can't do that, and they're scared if they complain, then it'll be taken out of them in the ward. People are scared in our hospitals. I get lots of complaints, and I try to take them up. And I can tell you now, there are lots of problems in our hospitals that will not be solved until we change the top management. Now, starting with Helen Joseph Hospital, at the moment they've got an acting CEO who's also the CEO of the Rahima Musa Hospital. Now, how on earth do you expect anybody to manage two very complex hospitals at the same time? So that tells you all you need to know about problems in the Gauteng Health Department. Why don't we have a top-class CEO for Helen Joseph Hospital who can tackle all the problems there, the morale problems, I think, because clearly the attitudes among staff are not what they should be, and a firm hand is needed. So I would also start at the very top. I'm actually calling on Premier Lesufi to remove the present head of department that he appointed a few months ago. I think there were irregularities in the appointment, and I don't see how you can appoint someone who is being investigated by the SIU on a very serious allegation. So those are the changes that we need, and the response of the Gauteng Health Department I think is a poor excuse. They should play open cards and say we will examine all the allegations meticulously and see what we can to improve things. But most of all, let's get a decent top-class CEO for Helen Joseph Hospital. It's just appalling that we haven't had that for a number of years.
I mean, you've been doing this, or you've been in this space and talking these issues daily for as long as I can remember. What do you think is wrong with or inadequate with our system, such that, I mean, these things escape all oversight provisions?
Well, you know, we have scandals erupt every now and then, and I can tell you there was a poor man who died at Tembisa Hospital, you recall, during COVID, and the only way he got attention was to tweet, and the minister apparently saw the tweet, and that's how the whole health ombudsman did investigation, which was very critical. Then we had the whole scandal at Rahima Musa Hospital with the CEO there, who was eventually removed. She should never have been appointed in the first place. You remember Dr. Tim de Meyer spoke out about terrible conditions at Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital, and the CEO attempted to suspend him for speaking out. So that's what we're dealing with. So again, the health ombudsman did a very critical report, but it's not followed up. And I think it's not followed up because there's protection. There's protection of incompetence, and there's protection for, frankly, criminal syndicates. How else can I describe it? The SIU has now found that there was about 3 billion rand of wasted, mismanaged money at the Tembisa Hospital alone over 3 years. Now, imagine instead of being siphoned off, if that money was properly spent at Tembisa Hospital, you'd have a completely different situation. And I can tell you now, there's a scam at every single hospital. It's all over the place. The Gauteng health budget, 64.8 billion rand, is enormous. If you spent it effectively and efficiently, I think we could provide a reasonably decent service in Gauteng. But I said in the legislature, in the health debate, I said as follows: the crooks are still in charge, and if Babita Deokaran was still in that department, she would be silenced all over again. And that's the problem. Time and time again, you hear all the promises, doesn't amount to anything unless there's a clear change of direction from the very top. We're going to have terrible incidents like Mr. London suffered again and again. And there's far more of these incidents, but people aren't able to bring attention to them with social media.
You know, I was asking this question because, I mean, you will recall Professor Malekapuru Makgoba's, report as Ombud, which was quite scathing about a whole lot of institutions and places. In other words, how much of a problem is the fact that we tend to focus? There's Mr. London's viral video now, and we run with that, but forgetting that, Professor Malekapuru Makgoba's report, every quarter you have your TACs talking about the experiences of people who visit clinics and hospitals to access medicines and to get treatment. You know? So we get these fairly regularly, but there doesn't seem to be a systematic focus on sorting out the things, everything that is fundamental and broken.
Well, yeah, that's the responsibility of the ruling party. And I'm trying to hold the Premier to account. And in fact, I'm also having a motion of censure against the present health MEC for her terrible treatment of cancer patients. I think that it may well be a worse scandal than Life-Esidimeni, which was another issue that I managed to expose in the Gauteng legislature by asking questions: how many had died? So you would think after a terrible scandal like Life-Esidimeni, 144 mental health patients died, the message would get through. But we have a cancer treatment scandal now, a massive backlog. The budget is actually there. The TAC, Section 27, the Cancer Alliance have taken the department to court, and they're desperately trying to get urgent treatment for cancer patients who will die unless they have radiation therapy as soon as possible. So I've brought the first ever motion of censure against an MEC in the Gauteng legislature, and now that the ruling party doesn't actually have a majority, maybe we can get it passed. I mean, that's the sort of measure that we actually need. And I do want the Public Service Commission to do a thorough investigation of how the present head of department was appointed, because if you're appointing the wrong people in high places, well, then you're going to get the wrong result. And that, I think, is the story of the Gauteng Health Department. Cadre deployment, political protection. It's just seen as a huge budget that's available to be looted. That's really what it's all about. And, to clear that up requires major surgery, and I believe a change in political control. That's really the lesson of the Gauteng Health Department. I've been spokesperson for health in Gauteng since 1994. I've seen all the promises, and none of them have come to fruition, because at the end of the day, there's too many vested interests and too many people who are happy with the status quo because they're benefiting from it. But the people who aren't benefiting from it are ordinary patients. And not everybody is resourced like Mr. London to make a video that can go viral, and they suffer. And I think the public need to come together, civil society, and we need to pressure as much as possible and try and get real change for once.
Jack Bloom, thank you very much for your time. He's, of course, the DA's Gauteng Health spokesperson.